So, hi, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel and to this podcast. Actually, it's a heel cast with my good friend Marisa Raymond. Marissa is a Jewish American woman living in France with her family. And she and I met a couple of years ago through this online global women's community that's dedicated to helping women economically. And we have just connected every Wednesday at noon to chat and coach each other. She uses human design primarily. I use North Node astrology primarily. We both also know a lot of other modalities that we bring in. And we basically just wanted to get on and share our wisdom with each other. And so we learned so much from each other. We thought we would also include everybody else. And that's why we're here. Marissa, do you want to say a few words about what we're doing, what we're up to, what themes we discuss?
Well, I absolutely love it. I think one of the things that really spoke to us about when we started connecting was our shared values about cultural exploration, embodiment practices, and then also like the work that we're doing as we are learning to kind of deprogram the the conditions that were put into us and learn to heal and come into who we are authentically here to be. So those three themes are really important, and that's what we're going to be talking about on these podcast, heel casts, fun casts together.
Playcasts, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to say that I use tapping in my coaching, and we often do some tapping, and we will be doing tapping at the end of each episode or another healing modality or embodiment exercise so that we can integrate some of the themes that we discuss. So we hope you'll join us.
Yeah. So stay tuned till the end.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for being here. Love you all. Woo. Yeah, living abroad, what was it like? You say you finally realized French people aren't going to change for you. I would say the same thing about Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle, it's not going to change for me. And what I am learning is that, yeah, I can change. And it's just having enough trust with people like you that you can bring me back to getting out of that fight or flight state. We've all had reasons why we are seeking some alternative space to support each other, you know, community outside of what we have been in. Me up to not really feel like I can trust women, especially maybe, but men
Mhm.
too. Like the whole situation being a
Just
scapegoat.
people.
Yeah, I mean, family is your first crucible of relationships. And
And
it's set,
trust is the first phase, like having studied human development, right? Like
babies trust.
yeah, Piaget talked about, and Eric Erickson talked about trust being that first phase, like 0 to 18 months. Like you're learning to trust the people who are caregiving for you, and based on, and it's like we don't remember that,
Well,
right?
I know that my grandmother came the day I was born. Came June 30th. I was born July 1st at 12:31 a.m. Like it was karmic. My mother popped me out because my grandmother needed a reason to be living with her son-in-law and her only daughter, her only child.
Yeah.
And so she was proud and she intercepted the bonding. And I was also in the hospital with jaundice for a day or two. And then she left when I was 2. But I think she was a very loving caregiver. And I did have that good experience. And then she left, and that was where things kind of got in my brain like, nobody's there. I don't
Right.
know what to do. I
This
can't trust.
person that I trusted left.
Yeah. And it must have been my fault, is what a therapist said. And I'm still kind of feeling into how to heal that. I mean, I've learned a lot of techniques to reparent myself, and then you just learn through relationships. Like that's Teal Swan's big thing. You know, Teal Swan,
Mhm.
she's guru.
Right.
Anyway, she says like you can't heal these things outside of relationship. And so coming into this loom, I was going there to heal my relationships with women, to learn how to trust women again, have sisterhood again. And I'm so grateful because you represented a lot of what I had already known when I was younger that was familiar and really nurturing and instructive. Just the intellect, liberal political consciousness, ravenous growth and experience. I love that. I love the way you're so out there with so many things. Like it just fills me with so much excitement and joy. Like this is what life is supposed to be like. You're supposed to be out there doing things for the good of the planet with other people and having amazing, experiences. And
Yeah.
then because of what happened for me right out of college, which broke open all of these core issues I hadn't dealt with, I really felt cut off from
Yeah.
all of that. And I came out to Seattle, then I went to Korea for 7 years, which was healing in some ways, but it was still kind of isolating in others. Then came back to Seattle, which is not the culture that I grew up in, but somehow it has become a new place for me. And it's very different from the East Coast. And I had to kind of start from scratch and, relearn how to be in a culture. And when I came back from Korea, it dawned on me, oh, Seattle is like another country. Why am I
Yeah.
expecting it to be like the East Coast? There's Swedish people here, Nordic people. They're the ones who settled it. Like I'll just pretend that I'm in Sweden. And
Yeah.
that helped. And I also appreciate the good things. Like I love Mari Meko and those designs, and they have great design. Like that was something that I could actually appreciate and look up to. Like there must be some good ideas in this culture because I do like this aesthetic. So that was good. So how about you in France for this long?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Seattle feeling like another culture and like a Swedish Nordic one because when I moved to Seattle, and then I'll talk about France, but like when I moved to Seattle, I went because my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, was in grad school, right? So I went and I moved to the U district, and we had gone to this tiny liberal arts college, right? We went to Bowdoin, there were 1,600 students at the time. And then like moving to like the U district and like going to meet him on UW's campus, and it's like a whole city, but not because it's academic and it's like, right? Like, and there's uh
Interesting.
so to me, it was like this whole other culture that was tied to academia.
Yeah.
Um, and um and this like he had lived on like on frat row, so it was like also tied to like the stereotype of American university Greek life, like party, you'd wake up on the weekends and just be like cans of like leftover beers, just like nasty shit outside people's apartments. So yeah, it was like it felt like a really different culture. And the way that I adapted to it was getting involved in Hillel, which, um, like the Jewish student group, because I wanted to find something that felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear what you're saying because I think that's what we always do, right? Like whether you're moving from one country to another, or you're moving from one city to another, or like a city to a suburban area, like everything comes with its own culture. And and I think that's like when you're the one, it's like when we started this by me saying, right, like the French aren't going to change for me. Like when you're the one who's different because you're the one who hasn't lived there your whole life, or you're the new one, like, yeah, like everybody has their life and you're the thing that's shaking things, that's shaking the world up. And it's really uncomfortable until you realize, oh, right, like the only thing I can control is myself. And there are days like I shared this. I was on a community call earlier today, and this woman was talking about like life being hard. And like her mantra is life is hard, but I'm walking through it. I was like, yes, that's it. That's my, like, I need to tattooed on my forehead, right? Like part of community. And I think for me, like going to Hillel or like when we came to France, finding like the expat community, right? Like we seek those things that are like us, that make us feel comfortable. Um, but if none of it makes us feel comfortable, then it's like, crap, like I'm isolated, I'm alone, like, and especially when you don't have trust. I think that's when you don't know if you can trust the environment, when you don't know if you can trust yourself to be yourself instead of trying to fit in. That's when I think the problems start, right? Like, um,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. Because when I reflect on what you just said about finding the Jewish community, that is similar to what I do, like going to hot yoga reminds me of growing up with ballet. I'll go 3 times a week, which was frequent when I was young. And I feel this familiar comfort with looking at my body in the mirror and working out and being with other people who are in their bodies. And I often strike up friendships with like with the yoga teachers because that feels familiar. And I trust people who are in their body. Like you can't lie in your body. And I remember when I first came to Seattle, I did come to live with a friend from college, and there was another friend who joined us from college. And then there were other people who moved out. So there was a whole community. But I got into teaching, and teaching is school, which has also been a very common marker throughout my life. And it was a safe place. And working with kids feels familiar. I'm a Cancer. And then I taught preschool, Head Start preschool. I also got involved in the dance community. And I started organizing Asian American arts. I started writing, yeah, you do what you know, and you find the people who you resonate with. But something came to mind. You're from Maine and Bowdoin. You went to Bowdoin, which is in Maine.
Yeah. Hmm.
Seattle is also northwest, northeast, northwest on the coast. Were there similarities that you can appreciate now with that aspect of where you were?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, growing up in New York City, I think by the time I was 18 and looking at going to college, Um, I did not want to be in a big city. I didn't want to be at a big university because I didn't want to feel lost, right? The irony being that I have agoraphobia and I don't like being in empty spaces, which I've discovered later. And it's like, oh, because I grew up in Manhattan where like there are 8 million people for you to like just fit into, right? Like nobody's gonna like it's harder to be mugged when there's 8 million people that the mugger can choose from, right? And then like you go to this, so I went to a town of Bowdoin is in Brunswick, which is a town of 25,000. So for me, it was going to like small town America. My college roommate, my freshman year, came from a town of 5,000. So she was coming to like the big city. um, but yeah, I think so. I chose Bowdoin because it had a sailing team. It was near the ocean. It was um a really cute New England town. I went to visit in the winter, right? And it was like, oh, it's so pretty with the snow and the ice rink and
I,
um
Maine is really beautiful. I haven't been there yet
yeah,
myself. Always heard it's
yeah.
beautiful.
It's so pretty. And then when we moved to Seattle, Sean went before me, so um I didn't choose that like I chose that I was going to go meet Sean, but I didn't choose that he was going to Seattle and that's where I was going to meet him, right?
Did he kind of choose Seattle partly because there was some kind of familiarity with the
He
geography?
chose Seattle because when he was going to visit grad schools, he felt the most comfortable with the students.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you're saying, right? It wasn't, as far as I know, I mean, based on our conversations, it wasn't necessarily the environment of the place, it was the people. Um, and I am not sure you can really like pull those two completely apart, right? Like we're talking about like there's a culture of the place that draws you're either born there and develop that culture or you move there and you want to like integrate into that culture.
And what's
Um,
Sean's background culturally and regionally that he would feel comfortable with the students of UW?
so Sean grew up in Switzerland. He grew up so kind
Okay.
of similar to us. Like he was born, uh, his parents were from Massachusetts, but they were living in West Virginia when he was born. Then when he was three, they moved, three and a half, they moved to Switzerland because his parents wanted to see what it was like to live in another country. And they ended up staying there for 10 years and then
Yeah.
moving back to Massachusetts. So he had the New England and then went to college in the Northeast. And then, but I think too, it's like,
Switzerland is a little bit akin to Sweden and Norway, so that might have been what resonated for him.
yeah, and he went to like the international school, right? So he was also surrounded by people of different cultures and um, different class levels and different he's got some really fun. We should have him on this podcast to talk about his experience. I don't want to speak for him, but I think it was like the people that he met. I mean, I know the people from Seattle that he went to grad school with, right? Because we spent the next 5 years there, but they were just down to earth people who had a fairly decent balance between being a grad student and having fun. And
Work-life balance.
they all had, yeah, like they all had their own hobbies outside um, of the department. Um,
What
and
was the
and
department? What was the studies that he was doing?
astronomy and astrophysics.
Wow.
Not
And then French. And then he's interested in French studies.
no, no. So he doesn't is not he's a scientist through and through.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
for some reason, I thought it was about his interest in French studies that got you guys to France.
No, it's because he spoke French because he lived in Switzerland.
Oh,
Um, it's interesting because, and again, like I said, we definitely, I think you would love to have to speak with him and hear it more. And I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I will. The growing up in Switzerland for those 10 years, right? Like he had an identity as a third culture kid, as an expat child, right? Like he was the American and felt really patriotic. And then, his parents were like, oh, we're moving back to America. And he had this massive reentry problem, right? Because he hadn't grown up as an American student in America. He grew up as an American student in Switzerland, so kind of more too Swiss to be American and too American to be Swiss. Um, and so high school was hard, like because they moved back his freshman year of high school. So um, that was a hard transition for him. But all that is to say, like your original question, like what was it about Seattle? I think it was like similar to what had drawn me to Maine, which was like being on the coast, the weather kind like they're sort of being seasons like but not like super extreme at least at the time. I mean New England and the Northeast can get bad, um but there's also just this like beautiful fall foliage and Seattle had summertime and springtime in Seattle is just gorgeous and like the tulips and
cherry
so
blossom.
yeah, I think just the greenness of it and
Flower.
people like being outside. Like I remember in Seattle, um, when I worked at UW, one of my bosses lived on Bainbridge Island and he rode his bike. Like he took the ferry and then rode his bike from downtown to the university. And like in the middle of like misty December Seattle rain, like people just want to be outdoors even when the weather's crappy. Like, right? Because it's like, oh, I could just be outdoors. And I think that's really part of the culture in Maine that was also in Seattle as well. Because it is just beautiful and you just want like the nature is just calling to you.
Yeah, nature is definitely always a refuge when you're even feeling isolated because of the culture.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see that. I mean, that's my younger sister lives in Portland and she had been in Seattle and she has stayed in this area because she likes the work-life balance. That's a really wonderful thing. People come here because, like a lot of people on the East Coast, they don't have that same orientation. They go to their jobs, they come home, they do things, but it's not like they connect with nature on a regular basis.
Yeah, I had the best boss when I was in grad school in Seattle. I was a TA, a research assistant, and my boss would be like, one day he'd be like, "Oh, it's the hottest day of the year. We're gonna go to my house and like we're gonna take the afternoon off and go sailing at my house." He had a house on Lake Union. Um, and then like the next day was hotter, and he's like, "I guess we're taking this afternoon off too." And like that sort of attitude of that's when you know you found your people, right? When you're just like, oh, that like this person care for me anyway. It was like my people are people who enjoy life just as and they like their job, they love their job, but they aren't their job, right? They like their job is one of the hats they wear. And I feel like in Seattle, that's a big part, or at least at the time we were there, and maybe it was being in grad school there, but that was part of the culture, was like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
and I
is.
think that's what Sean picked up on when he went there. Like when I said like everybody had a hobby outside of being a grad student, um, that I'm not sure is I mean, I don't have anything I can really compare it to. Um,
France is like that too. France is all about the enjoyment of life.
oh yeah.
And in Europe in general, there's a lot more work balance, work-life balance than there is in the US.
Yeah, I mean, here you work to go on vacation, right? Like you just work
Priorities.
to pay your bills and then bide your time until it's August and you can take the whole month off. Yeah, it's very different.
When I lived in France, that was my first time really outside of the US at 16. I lived with a French family. And I was like, what is going on? We just go to the beach every day. It was like, I was like, what's going on? It
Yeah.
was really interesting culture shock. And I remember also traveling through France on my way back from living abroad in Korea, coming back to the States. I was traveling through Europe and I passed through France and I looked her up and I called her and we had this brief conversation. But the one thing she said was she had worked in the UK as a nanny for a little bit, as an au pair. But she says, but you know, we French and the English, we have this wall between us. We
Yeah.
French, we think about tomorrow. They think about 2 years from now. And I'm thinking, you should talk to Americans. You know, we're the worst.
40-year plans.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious when you were in, because we talked about this, you like when you were in Korea, um, when you and I've talked before, you talked about when you went back to Korea, when you went to Korea, it felt like you were going to a place where you had representation.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if you can like share a little bit about that and how like just how that felt, like the pros and cons of that, because
yeah, I'd
right,
love to.
yeah,
So I went through a lot of disillusionment after I graduated from college, went to Yale, graduated with honors, had all the, perks, good friends and doors opening for me in New York City where I got a job right away, an apartment right away, like a lot of good things. But that year opened up a lot of my stuff that I basically functioned on top of. I was in this relationship with this Jewish classmate, met after we graduated, and it was probably my first very serious relationship, and it just broke open all this stuff. And
yeah,
so I left actually after a year. I came to Seattle and 4 years of just all this stuff to heal and grow and explore things, teaching, dance, activism. And then I got an opportunity to go to Korea. And when I got to Korea, I knew I needed to go there. First of all, I had some debt I needed to pay off, and I'd always heard you could make great money teaching English. I'd never been to Korea. I was 27 when I first went there. And I knew that a lot of what I had to heal from that relationship was feeling about being Asian, Asian American, Korean, and I knew it would be good for me. And I had pretty much maxed out all of my ideas and resources in Seattle. I was doing a lot of something called reevaluation counseling and some therapy and all this stuff, and I was still in a lot of pain. Although I will say that
Mm,
the co-counseling, in some ways, it kind of fanned the flames. It just makes you look at it all the time. So I went, and I remember just feeling this kind of interesting nostalgia. I started taking Korean at my mother's alma mater that has a language institute that's a real mecca for Koreans brought up abroad, the KLI, Korean Language Institute. And I remember just walking in that area and feeling this sort of memory, like it reminded me of my family with other Korean families when we were young. We'd have Korean picnics and all these things, and it just had this familiarity that was really poignant. It
mm,
also, like, I would go to these little bakeries they have, and their pastries are very more European, or they don't look like an American bakery. And so there was just this interesting feeling of, also, it felt like a time capsule. I felt like I was going back to the 60s, maybe in terms of women's rights or something, you know? So I felt like I was going back in time and living in this era that was very nostalgic and poignant. And it was a time where I really could experience a lot of things I hadn't allowed myself to experience,
mm.
feeling connections. I met so many Koreans brought, a lot of them were adoptees, a lot of them were artists, and I did my art there and I met people. So it was a real time of like emotional, creative, familial, cultural immersion, exploration. And I don't know that I could have done that in the US. Like just the way things move in the US, it's much more cerebral and fast paced. In Korea, it was like I could sort of go back in time and repair myself. And
Yeah.
I also taught and I worked with kids. It's funny because I worked with preschoolers in Seattle, and then I taught at this institute for first to like middle school kids. And then I did some private tutoring for families. And then I taught at a university for 3 years. I taught some business people, family, moms, whatever. So it felt like I kind of went through all these different developmental stages and met Koreans who kind of showed me what I might have been more like if I had grown up in Korea. I also worked at an American newspaper, Korea Herald, English language newspaper, not American. And I met, people who were like me working in the world of journalism, editing. And there was a one woman there who was about my age. And we were different in a lot of ways, but there were some ways that I could learn what it might have been if I had stayed in Korea, what my life would have been like. So
Great.
it was interesting. Yeah. And I also wanted to say, like, at one point, I remember being at the KLI, and there were a bunch of us in this classroom, Korean Americans and Koreans brought up abroad. And maybe this one woman from Germany was there. She was a real hoot, and some other people, but it was mostly Koreans. And the teacher was a Korean woman. And the way she was like telling us what to say and then having us all say it, it just reminded me of this like mother hen, like giving food to all of her chicks. It was awesome. And this one woman who is German, I always remember her, Anna. She was so wonderful, very warm-hearted. And she was just cracking up the whole time. Let's
Talking about culture shock.
Well, I don't know. She was like there because she was totally interested in Korean studies. She'd been there for a while. She was like one of these people with some sort of scholarship fellowship or something. And I asked her once, like, she was a very like intelligent, sophisticated, amazing woman. And yeah, I had an American roommate, a white American roommate for a while, and she knew her too. We both loved Anna. And she's like saying that she just finds everything so funny. And she goes, "You too." And she was talking about me and like, me, how do I fit into all this? Because I thought she was laughing at Koreans. And she goes, "You want everything to be logical, logical." And understood what she was saying. She had this bird's eye view of Koreans coming together, trying to find their way back into the culture, having all kinds of reactions to it. And I could recognize, yeah, I was frequently frustrated. No, let's make it logical. Let's do it this way. Why are we doing it this crazy way? Like, So that's kind of what it was like.
What pops up for me when you shared that you went there when you were 27 is, you know, that John Denver song, Rocky Mountain High? Like there's a lyric where he says like, uh, um, he was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he's never been before.
Oh,
And like that just when you said that number and then I thought about that song and um I think there's something really poignant about 27 in general. And then through a human design lens, right, that's around the time of our first solar return. So, I mean, of our first Saturn return. And so there's just there is a rebirth that happens at that time, the sort of pull that's taking us
yeah.
to learn something more about ourselves, to come home to ourselves at a time when our culture is like, fly, little bird, like go out and spread your wings and like,
Yeah.
settle down. So I love what you're saying about Korea being a place where you could slow down and kind of catch your breath and do that healing. And then just even the like being able to do it stepwise as you're teaching these students of different levels. That's just a
They were teaching me.
beautiful.
They were teaching me. I remember this one grade, one class I was teaching, and the kids were just so like rambunctious and funny and like harassing each other. They were like a bunch of brothers and sisters. That's the beautiful thing in Korea is everybody's so homogenous and there's beauty to that. Um, as well as bad things. But yeah, I just felt like they're so comfortable being Korean. Like I didn't grow up being comfortable being
Yeah.
Korean. Like I was supposed to be something else. And any mention of, Chinese or Japanese in social studies class, everybody would look at me, not everybody, just the annoying boys, like, and make me feel very, very uncomfortable. Like I don't belong here. There's something different about me. And it was very painful. So these kids are just like shouting, laughing, and they're recognizing things in me. Like this one girl at one point, I think I must have been sharing something about my family. Like I was like such a freaking trauma dumper in Korea, telling them about, what my mom did, and she was just going, ah, ah, ah. And I kind of recognized that trope of like a Korean Hanwani grandmother, old woman, just like bemoaning her fate, and her situation. And I'm like, that's me. And I was so impressed that this woman, this girl, could wise beyond her years, is like poking fun at me, like helping me get beyond seeing things that way. Like it was a gift. It was a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say that my mother actually came to the US at age 27. And she went back to Korea to visit for the first time 7 years later. I came back to the States 7 years later, although I actually came back a few times to do a couple things, my sister's wedding, a college reunion, co-counseling intensive. So it was sort of this natural kind of birthing action that was happening. The universe was pushing me back to the States at a certain point, like, I think I'm supposed to be back here. And
Yeah.
it was so funny because I didn't know that my mother had gone at the same age. I didn't know she came back at the same age. It was just really crazy. But
Yeah.
what happens? Our unconscious is really piecing things together. They say that the firstborn, their emotional energy matches the father's, and the secondborn matches the mother's, and the relationship between the two siblings often mirrors that of the parents. And also, the oldest child is responsible for sort of the explicit rules of the family. Do your homework. Mom and dad said don't do that, etc. And
I'm laughing because that's exactly the dynamics of my family. Like, exactly.
it's crazy, the things we don't realize. And then the second born is in tune with the implicit rules, which are often, cultural or emotional or things. And when those two systems are not compatible, when one is like suppressing the other, the one whose rules are not being followed is needing to act out, which is what I've done. My journey fleeing the US, fleeing my family, trying to find anywhere to come back to besides the US at a certain point when I was coming back. I was like, maybe I could stay in London. I speak the language. But pushed to come back. And I actually lived with my parents for 3 months, which was like crazy. And then I came back to Seattle again. So yeah, and I feel like things that I've said about feeling trapped in Seattle because of the provincial culture, feeling like I need to be back in a big city like New York is what my mother would say about being in Ohio. We were in Youngstown, Ohio, and she's like, if we were in a bigger city, I could have had more opportunities to expand my
Yeah.
education and my career. So we've had a lot of similar issues. Have
I,
you?
I, I love that because, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So like the first thing that jumps out at me, and then I'll circle back to that point, that I wanted to say was I had never really thought about like the aspect of me going to Hillel when I moved to Seattle really was like at Bowdoin. I was part of the Bowdoin Jewish organization, but we were like, I don't know, 100 people in the whole school, and maybe like 10 of us were active, not even like fully. Um, and so there was this sort of like coming from New York City where like everyone knew when it was a Jewish holiday or when it was right? Like we all knew each other's cultures. It was just so diverse that like we all knew like about other people's religion and country of origin and cultural practices. And then to go to like Maine, which like you said, like homogenous for the good and the bad. Um, and like that sort of isolation of just being like, okay, like, is this because I'm a New Yorker? Is it because I'm a Jew? And so then going to Seattle, like I didn't really think about it, but I think that was part of the reason too why I went to Hillel was like because the experience at Bowdoin, like not being able to fully feel like I could connect with the Jewish part of myself. And then when we moved to France, um, when we moved to Colorado before we moved to France, I really the I moved by myself while Sean was still finishing up his PhD, and I got there. Obviously, started the school year, was invited to a Jewish family's home for Rosh Hashanah, and that was sort of like the end of my connection with the Jewish community in Boulder because I was now at this point like married into a non-Jewish family, living in their home, in their space, in their energy. Um, and when we moved here to France, we had kids, and same kind of thing. Like people kept the very first Jewish person I met was like, "Oh, you're not gonna like the synagogue because you're Ashkenazi and New York, and this is Sephardic and North African." And I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know what that means, but you told me not to go, so I won't." And so it's really interesting now, kind of finding my way back to that. But because I think it was missing, right? There is something really powerful about like you're saying, like somebody is mirroring some behavior and you just get it because it connects to your ancestors and your, like people from that. So that representation that, like you said, that lives within us from those stories and from our experiences really are like glue. Um, when we moved uh, to France, I think what in terms of sort of ancestral patterns. This is like my family was here, right? Like my mom's family is from Belgium and had to flee during World War II. Um, and so a lot of kind of coming back. I always wanted to live in Europe. I thought like there was this like pull that I always had as a young child of like I need to go live somewhere else. So my mom's an immigrant. My grandmother immigrated to Brazil during the war, and then after the war settled there permanent until she went to America. My mom was raised in Brazil and then went to America. My great grandmother was from Switzerland and went to Belgium. Her family was from Poland and went to Switzerland. Like I'm the fifth generation woman in my family who is raising my children outside of the country that I was born in. Um, and and so it kind of makes sense in some ways that I left America, not just leaving New York when I went to Seattle or went to Colorado, like, but actually left the country. Um, through the lens of what you're saying, right? Like we're sort of pulled to repeat these ancestral
Yeah.
patterns and to heal things that maybe weren't healed in a previous generation, or to have the experience different through our own lens. Um,
And they say
yeah,
like Jews are like kind of nomadic. They were nomadic for many centuries. And actually, as Gen Xers, we are the nomad in the Strauss-Howe generational theory.
yeah.
And yeah, it's so interesting that you had connections with Switzerland, and then you have a partner who lived in Switzerland, and his parents are from what ethnic background?
Massachusetts. Like both of them are from Massachusetts. Like,
So,
well, I mean, my mother-in-law's parents were from Ireland.
okay.
So like she's Irish American. And then my father-in-law, um, his mother's side is French Canadian. So
Got it.
Quebecois that came down to Massachusetts. So yeah, like I mean, it's a very international nomadic
Mhm.
heritage on both sides. I think that's what drew Sean and I to each other. Um,
And it's more and more common in the world that everybody's had all these different cultural iterations.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so I think that's part of, I mean, I love hearing what you're saying, because I think kind of coming in some ways, moving back to France is like coming to the homeland,
Uh,
even though like it's not where my mom, it's not my mom's homeland, in the sense that it's not where she was raised. And France isn't, it's not my grandmother's homeland, but Europe, the continent, is the
yeah.
homeland of, for several generations in my family. Um,
And Belgium is French speaking largely, right? Don't they speak
yeah, and
French?
my grandmother was from the Flemish part of Belgium, and my grandfather was from the French part.
Okay. But there is a connection. Like, isn't Belgium sort of like the Canada to the
Yeah,
US?
Belgium
Oh,
is such a crazy country because it's tiny, right? Like it's small, but like it's basically like you've got the French side, and then you've got the Flemish side, and then you've got this teeny tiny little German side, that's like 1% of the population. And they're
wow.
constantly, like, to this day, fighting for
Yes.
representation. And to the point where, like, uh, any document that I get, because I have Belgian citizenship, like any document that I get from the Belgian government, like ballots for elections, census forms, even like letters, renewing my passport, emails from the consulate, like they all come in all three languages. And it's like you're like literally like you're like I like it's sort of random which one's on top. And so sometimes I'll get a document and I'm like, I feel like I should understand this because the last time I opened a document, French was first, but now Flemish is first. So I'm like, it takes me that moment to be like, oh, okay, right, like turn the page. um, but yeah, it's an interesting country because it has all these different cultures embedded in it. And France is really similar to that too. Like the longer that I live here and the more people that I meet, uh, who like who have been here generations enough and have been part of, sort of understand um, the history because of France and how it worked. Like French became there was no like French as the national language here until I believe like the beginning of the 19th century of the 1900s, like after World War One. Was like we need to have this sense of
Unity.
of unity, even though they had a constitution, even though it was a country, because you had um, these tribal communities that had, you had uh, the Occidents who were in Occitanie, which is, Toulouse, and you had the Basque who were in Pays Basque, you have the Breton who are in Brittany, and they all have their own language. So yeah, there really is this, even within this country of France, a lot of different cultures. But there was such a push to be like, we are French, that like you see that sort of play out in people's discomfort and people's wounds. And and I think it's really similar to things you see everywhere, right? Like we all have that experience because like you and I've talked about, we're all these
I
like
mean,
these nomads.
yeah, but this isn't really interesting. Like, I feel like now I'm starting to have this feeling of what this podcast is drawing out from us because this is very relevant. Our world has become very interconnected, especially with the internet
Yeah.
and things like third culture kids and dislocations and conflict because of difference. Like we are trying to find a solution. How do we come together and not get into terrible wars and clashes because of these patterns of needing to fight for our identity and fight for space and land and like what is going on psychologically that maybe with our advanced abilities now to learn how to take care of ourselves and to understand ourselves, what kind of solutions are there? And I also want to say before I forget, um, something you said about Belgium. Oh, like, yeah, the Chinese, there are so many different dialects. There's like hardly anybody who can speak the same dialect unless it's one of the big ones. And what you said about Belgium reminded me of Malaysia, where there's Indians, Chinese, and Malaysians. And I'm just thinking how relevant this topic is. Like I'm seeing on TikTok this Filipino girl, their family is called the Rice Cup family. And the mother is a Filipina and she married a white American guy. And this daughter is so precocious. And she reminds me of my little sister when she was young, just super smart and super like jabby at like, stuff like my Americans and like really loving the Filipino side of herself. Like she's really showing us that there's this shift now. We're not trying to be American. We're actually craving something else. And you see this one reel where she and her family are visiting their grandparents in the Philippines. This little girl is in tears when she hugs them. She loves them so much. And she's very good at, like, she's got a very broad palate and she's eating like fish heads, dried fish, and she's so comfortable with that. Like it's really
I love
beautiful. It
it.
reminds me of my family in a lot of ways. And I just think these are the relevant issues. I also have been recently watching this Netflix series. It's a continuation of that whole like To All the Boys I've Loved series. And now it's focused on the youngest sister who is going to Korea, their Korean independent School of Soul or something like that. It's a college. And I was watching it and it brings me back to my time in Korea and to just being Korean American. And it's so healing to see that. And I remember like watching Crazy Rich Asians and being so angry the next morning because I'm like, why don't I get to see myself represented like this? Why is this such a new thing? Like
Right.
white people get to see images of them doing things, surviving and thriving all the time. I need this. It makes my life feel completely different when I see who I am represented.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think, to that point, part of doing the healing work and becoming like coming back to yourself, like we were saying at the beginning, um, requires it is really hard. It is really heavy. Is really uncomfortable because we have all these layers of conditioning on top that we have to sort of dig through. And it feels easier when you come home to a place you've never been before, right? And you're just like, oh, like even if it's a Netflix show, like where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, like somebody gets me
Yeah.
and I don't feel alone. And what I think is so, what just makes me laugh when I think about it is that we're still living in that place of fight or flight, right? Like when we feel unworthy, when we feel like nobody gets me, like it's that feeling of I don't belong, I'm not protected, I'm not safe, I don't trust, right? So it puts us into the fight or flight brain. But we've evolved so much deeper than that as a humanity, as a species, that like the fact that we continue to spend the majority of our time in that energy feels like we're actually uh going against nature, because nature's like, you're evolved, like you can practice love, you can pause and like get out of the lizard brain and like show up from it with a different energy. Like you can choose to flow through this energy, but we're still so just like,
We're
um,
in that now. Like the body knows the score, keeps the
yeah,
score. We
yeah,
are in this moment where we're realizing that there are ways to heal from trauma and emotionally self-regulate. This morning when I woke up, I was very tense and anxious. I had this and some other meetings and some conflict going on. And I'm like, I got to go to yoga. And I went to yoga very intentionally. And then I kind of trauma dumped on the yoga teacher for a little bit and realized she's at her job. I got to go, leave her alone. And I think we're all starting to learn how to do this,
yeah,
how to be embodied. These are the buzzwords: embodiment, neuroplasticity, um, self-regulation, tapping. Like we're finally getting there, but it's
yeah,
not been easy. We have been fighting against the stiff upper lip, carry on, head dominant culture that we've been living in. I talk about this trajectory where we've, started off as undifferentiated chaos, yin energy. We want to experience the ecstasy of dividing and reintegrating. This is the Taoist idea of evolution of the universe. And we split into yin and yang energy had to do what it did, which was to conquer and colonize and compete and individuate and suppress. And that whole like British expression, exploration, domination, colonialism to me is like a very clear example of how this operated. Like the British diaspora exploded at one moment. I don't know what the
or
year
the
was.
like Ottoman Empire, right? Like just for centuries and centuries, you had whoever, like, you know, um, like in China too, right? It was like whoever was the dominant force was like, "Ooh, I want more." Like what's on, and part of it was exploration, like what's on the other side of that mountain. But like now that I see it, I want it to be mine.
I'm going to take
Yeah,
who's there, whoever's there.
and I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna prove like because I'm stronger.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was,
And I think what's powerful when I hear you say that too is like, um, we have the language now that we're sharing and we're using and we're and like that's happening at a time where we're able to communicate, like you said, like the internet, like we can communicate on this global level. So while I we used to joke when we moved here that like France was like America but 10 years younger. Like it was like whatever happened in America, if you wait like 5 to 10 years it's going to be here. And we've now lived here for 15 years, so we've continued to see this play out. And so to see like it's happening faster now because you have the internet, because you have things getting here faster, the information getting here, people have been, that confidence to go outside of the comfort zone and implement what they see happening in another place. Um, and so it is really powerful. And it comes with the other side of that coin, right? Which is like we have to be willing to feel the discomfort. And the call I was on earlier, this one of the people was talking about growing up in a cult-like religion and like realizing when they realized that it was a cult and they needed to leave, they had to leave everything behind because their
yeah.
entire family, everything they knew was there, and they had been so isolated from everything else that they had nobody to go to. And it was really, really scary. And since leaving, they've had to really learn how to do all these things um, that are uncomfortable on their own. And one of the people on the call was like, it sounds like, you're going through grief. And like you have to, because they were saying they had a podcast where they were sharing their experiences, and then they felt, oh, this is really low energy. I need to like rebrand and recreate this podcast. Um, and another person on the call was like, well, it sounds like you were just doing step one, which was like going through the grief, going through the anger, go like processing those uncomfortable um, emotions. And because you didn't have anyone to that you knew face to face that you could process it with, the fact that we have the internet and you were able to go and share it with the world and you didn't bottle up those feelings inside, now you like that helped your healing process. And I think that's what, when you talk about tapping, right? Like what I love about that process is you start with like, where are you feeling now? And the first rounds are stating the discomfort, stating the like, even though I feel this way, right? And then like, and voicing how you feel so that you can transform it instead of just trying to go straight into the like, I'm going to push this feeling away and pretend it's not there and try and shift into this high vibration when like your brain knows and your body knows, like you said, body keeps score, your body knows that you're bypassing. Like your body knows that it hasn't released that. And so, yeah, like I think that's all part of the healing.
It shows up as disease if you don't address it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, thank goodness we have these tools. I was actually just talking to my yoga instructor, and she said she had a migraine in the morning and she was trying to get here and she could only see out of one eye. And it was just all this chaos. And she's like, life is so silly. I'm like, yeah, it really is. We should have like a public billboard somewhere where we can all put on our information about how it's silly today for us. But I also said, I understand migraines are about having two opposing thoughts. And she was having her period. And I'm like, oftentimes when women are experiencing all of that, all of the things we do to survive in the culture that we live in has to shut down the female side. And then it comes up. And so you get a migraine. And I suggested she tap or masturbate or whatever. And she was really grateful to get that information. Like we don't necessarily have it, but we're starting to have it. So
Yeah.
that's what we need to do is share that information.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Share that information. Oh,
I
maybe
just want
that's the name of the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many names that could happen for this podcast. But I think learning how to trust is the big problem because we are smashing, clashing, and we have some breakthroughs. Like, that Blackpink artist who's now solo, Rosie. She was Rose. She has this album out, Rosie, and she's done this collaboration. It's gone really viral with Bruno Mars. Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? And there's this whole like viral dance. It's so cute. I'm just like, I'm not gonna learn it. It's way too complicated. But like I see videos of Shiloh Jolie Pitt like killing it with that choreography, and it's amazing. And everybody is like really like it's a moment for this Korean pop star to break into the international realm, a Korean woman. Like it hasn't happened really. We've had like some of these groups, BTS and Blackpink, but like a solo artist to make a name for herself on the international stage is a breakthrough for the paradigm.
Yeah.
It is. It's like now the yin is finally coming in and people are saying that's amazing instead of like, you know, not being able to penetrate.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's what's possible. She must be a very conscious. She grew up in New Zealand. I'm sure she's had her own awareness of culture and how to navigate it. And she's a creative spirit and she's been able to connect and network and create and make a real impact.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just excited because as a Korean American who grew up in Youngstown, Ohio in the 70s, I did not know that this was going to ever be happening in the world where like kimchi is something everybody knows about and
I've
loves.
got some in my refrigerator that I made last weekend.
The microbiome, everybody accepts that. And like we have like more awareness of Korean culture. It's a thing. It is
Yeah.
very infectious. And my feeling about it, because when I went to Korea, I was also like loving the Korean pop music. And that was in the, 90s and aughts. Um, and I was part of it. I was doing, my own creative work, and I just felt the healing of the emotional honesty of this culture, and
Yeah.
that's what I feel like the yin energy is here to show us. We've
Yeah.
been on this trajectory of yang suppressing the yin, and Korea, which is a culture that's been navigating Western energy for quite a while. It didn't shut it out like Chinese culture did with the Great Wall of China and just their own centrism. And they weren't the Japanese, where I feel like the culture really kind of suppressed its own authentic expression and really masked itself with a lot of tropes. I feel like Korean culture's energetic blueprint was this dynamism, this suppression, like kimchi buried underground, and it comes up spicy and fermented. And that dynamic energy between yin and yang created the opportunity for Korean pop culture to have an impact. And people can feel that emotional honesty that has been suppressed for so long in the West. And they are gravitating toward it. They feel it. They want it. They want to hear more. They're so enchanted by the K-dramas. Like it's all so like alive and real, you know?
Yeah, well, and like you're saying, like that, we started this by talking about joy, right? Like that pure joy of like when you tap into your authenticity, when you're just being playful um and you're in your body, right? Whether you're like singing and dancing or um, you know, playing with different hair colors or different clothing, like right, like you're testing and experimenting. And as 6336s in our human design, like we're here to experiment. And that's what kids do naturally, right? They're
Yes.
natural at like just playing and putting on different costumes, literally and figuratively, to as they're trying to figure out who they are. And then at some point, we're like, oh, the world comes and goes, that's who you are. And so when you talk about K-pop, and I think about like, you know, uh, Gangnam Style, which was like the first K-pop
Yeah.
song that I heard, right? And it was like, um, yeah, like he's just having a great time, like dancing in a garage. And you're like, what is this thing? Like he's just,
Hilarious.
and especially if you don't understand the lyrics, you're just like, he's just singing some random words and dancing in the garage. Like, um, so yeah, it's just playful. And I think that's what we're talking about too. Like part of coming home to yourself is coming home to that childlike curiosity and wonder and joy and playfulness where you get to just experiment without attachment to, what's going to happen on the other side. You're going to learn something from the experiment, but you don't have to know it before you try it.
Mhm. Yeah, I kind of want to go back to the whole idea of trust. I feel like it relates to what you just said. Like, I'm assertive. I have a voice. I have a
Yeah.
path. Like, I have my own voice. I have my own truth. I have my own center. And I'm trying to create a world that expresses my experience as a Korean American woman in a way that is satisfying.
Yeah.
But I have to be wary because oftentimes there are so many assumptions made and power runs in a certain direction, and I'm not going to do that. But it
Well,
did
and
not.
I think that speaks to what we were saying earlier, right? If you're always in fight or flight, and we've been conditioned to be in fight or flight, then if somebody doesn't respond to a text when you're feeling vulnerable, you make yourself the victim and them
Yes,
the villain.
yes,
And you're like, that's not reality.
yes,
It's
yes.
your interpretation of what happened. Um, and and we have the power to move outside of fight or flight. We have to learn how to do it because we weren't taught. But I think that's really what it is. Like we go into, Viktor
Yeah.
Frankl talked about like the family triangle, right? Like the villain, victim, savior. And if you think that you're the victim, then the other person has to be either the villain or the savior. And you might decide they're the villain because they didn't call you, but you think you're actually being the savior because you're like, I'm just going to give them space and let them figure out. And so then, like, you're just playing this game where instead we communicate and we use our words and we go, like, hey, did I say something that, triggered you? Or I'm sorry that you're feeling offended. Like, because the
I
second you
react.
don't play into that game and you move into
Yeah.
the evolved version, but it's hard. And I think that's where like um community becomes so important, friends become so important. And so I think there is something to be said, going back to you going to Korea, of like that going slower, being in an environment or around people who make you feel safe so that you can relearn to trust.
Yeah. That's what I did. And that's what
And
I think a lot of people need to do sometimes
yeah,
is retrace their steps in the family wounding and get their own resource because it's not going to be readily understandable. The more specific you can be about what happened to you and your family and get the resource that actually addresses it, then you're going to be able to handle other people not getting it.
yeah,
So it's really needed right now for everybody to learn how to heal themselves, understand themselves, self-regulate because of what's happening all over the world in so many different ways where people are traumatized. We've all had this yang over yin traumatic experience of being forced to suppress our emotions and just carry on. And now we're at a breaking point. We have collectively hit bottom. We are collectively hitting bottom with that orientation, with that addiction to control. And we have to do it individually in order to create it externally. But yeah, things like culture clash and those types of new friends trying to connect men and women, trans people and people who are not open to that. Like there's so many things happening. We are exploding in our individualism.
yeah,
This is a
yeah.
moment where people are like, can't suppress it anymore. So how do we navigate these times? I feel like that's the question that our podcast
Yeah.
is really helping to address.
I love that. Amen, sister. We were labeled so much. Like part of what I hear you talking about when you're talking about like breaking out is like breaking out of all of the labels we've put on ourselves or others have put on us and we've internalized because not like because we're not one label and we're not two like we have so many labels that it's like who am I today and who am I with this in this person with this person and who am I with this other person and who am I in this and like who am I when I'm in France and who am I when I'm in America and who am I with my husband and who am I with Jean and like it's exhausting instead of just going like, oh, I get to be Marissa and and I get to be Marissa in France and I get to be Marissa there and like all these identities are parts of who that is. Like it's all puzzle pieces that make me up, that make up myself. And I can break free from the pressure of that label, of those labels,
Yeah.
like, as like I don't know, the image that came in, it was like a mummy wrapped up in all those labels. Like instead, I get to just be like the human and the labels get to be like my internal organs, like or whatever. Like we're walking towards, we've healed some of it, and we're continuing to walk towards healing more of it because it is like the lifetime journey. Like we're not, we have to shed all of the shit from the generations and generations and generations past. Like we're not going to solve it in one lifetime.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, realize like human beings have been so barbaric in our history. Like the kinds of torture that they have found and performed on each other. And the wars, like I just have this image of medieval France or England and people like throwing like daggers down people's skulls. Like,
yeah.
it's
I'm laughing because they have pictures of that in museums here.
so like,
You're like, are you
oh,
proud
yeah,
of
no, maybe, yeah, maybe we
Or do you
are.
just want us to not forget and not repeat it, but you're showing it to us so that it normalizes it and desensitizes us? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
I
but
know. You're right. You're right. You're right. We are desensitized, maybe, but maybe we're not. I think that we forget that human beings have done that because our instincts, like maybe it was all the way it was supposed to be, and it seems horrific, but maybe that was the way the energy had to go down. Like nuclear explosions, you cannot hold that back. We
yeah,
are energy. And this yang energy that had to do what it had to do, the sooner that we just accept that was the way it went down and we stop like trying to argue with it, I think the more freedom we'll have to create something that actually is an evolution, a solution, you know.
Mm. We tap into the creativity. That's what I'm hearing you say, right?
And we can do some tapping right now because it's
Let's
about
do
one.
it. I love it. I didn't mean that segue, but that's a perfect segue. Let's finish up with tapping. Let's tap on our creativity and get rid of some of that.
Yeah, so just feel into your body. Anybody who's out there, and Marissa and us, me, we're feeling into our body wherever we have any stress or tension in the moment related to whatever's going on, whatever's been brought up by this conversation. So I'm feeling some energy in my like lower chakra, probably my sacral chakra. And I'm going to give it a number. It feels like kind of fear. And I would say it's about a 4. How about you?
I'm actually feeling it as aches in my hips and knees.
Mm.
Um, just like, and I'm gonna give it a number. Yeah, I would say about a 4.5, 5. It's
Good.
yeah.
Right. And I'm just going to look over to my trusty Louise Hay. You can heal your life. And just note that hip problems, fear of going forward in major decisions, nothing to move forward to. And her affirmation, I am in perfect balance. I move forward in life with ease and with joy at every age. And knees represent pride and ego, knee problems, stubborn ego and pride, inability to bend, fear, inflexibility, won't give in. And her affirmation, forgiveness, understanding, compassion. I bend and flow with ease, and all is well. So, listeners, this is how I work. I take in the information, give it some words, place it in the body. I know Marissa's North Node and her human design information. I know my own. And then I just bring it all together in a tap. You start by tapping on the side of your hand. Either hand will do, whichever feels comfortable. And repeat after me. So even though I have this tension in my body,
Even though I have this tension in my body,
in my hips, in my knees,
in my hips and my knees,
in my sacral chakra,
in my sacral chakra,
I feel fear.
I feel fear.
I'm not sure how to move forward.
I'm not sure how to move forward.
And I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
And I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
So that's a setup, and it helps our body become ready to let go of something. And we'll do it 2 more times. So even though I have this fear in my body,
So even though I have this fear in my body,
and listeners, you can put in whatever words fit your case, but fear is a pretty big catch-all. I'm ready to heal, release, and let go.
I'm ready to heal, release, and let go.
And I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
And I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I'm already feeling tension release.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I've been triggered recently
Even though I've been triggered recently
and my body has been holding it,
and my body has been holding it,
it's safe now to heal, release, and let go.
it's safe now to heal, release, and let go.
Then we'll start tapping inside of the eyebrows. You can do one side or both. This tension in my body,
This tension in my body,
side of the eye. Maybe it's ego or pride.
maybe it's ego or pride,
Maybe it's stubbornness.
maybe it's stubbornness,
Maybe it's just plain fear.
maybe it's just plain fear.
Under the eye, right on the cheekbones. Maybe I've carried this a long, long time.
Maybe I've carried this a long, long time.
Maybe it's been generational.
Maybe it's been generational.
Maybe it comes from historical events.
It comes from historical events.
And there's a good reason why I had all this fear.
And there's a good reason why I had all this fear.
Under the nose. But I'm safe now.
And I'm safe now.
I choose to heal, release, and let go.
I choose to heal, release, and let go.
I'm an adult.
I'm an adult.
Or if you're a child, it's okay. I'm a child.
I'm a child.
And I hear how I feel.
And I hear how I feel.
And I love and accept myself.
And I love and accept myself.
And then the dip in the chin right under the lip. I'm so grateful to be me.
I'm so grateful to be me.
I'm here to express who I am. Good. Let that yawn out.
I'm here to express who I am.
With joy and freedom.
With joy and freedom.
And the collarbone points right around these two little bones and go underneath. Safe to heal, release, and let go.
Safe to heal, release, and let go.
Of these old ideas.
Of these old ideas.
That it's not okay.
That it's not okay.
To be me.
To be me.
And under the arm, it's about 4 inches under the arm, right where the bra is for women. I choose to heal, release, and let go.
I choose to heal, release, and let go.
And know that I'm safe.
And know that I'm safe.
And loved.
And loved.
For exactly who I am.
And loved for exactly who I am.
And we'll just tap the inside of the wrists. I can move forward with ease.
I can move forward with ease.
With joy.
With joy.
Being me.
Being me.
I can take care of myself.
I can take care of myself.
And I can let others be themselves.
And I can let others be themselves.
At the very top of the head. I can release this tension in my body.
I can release this tension in my body.
I can let all of this emotion flow.
I can let all of this emotion flow.
My body wants to heal.
My body wants to heal.
Just by being present with myself.
Just by being present with myself.
I can let that go.
I can let it all go.
And take a deep breath. I notice I stumble over words sometimes when stuff is coming up for me.
Yeah, that was so
um,
beautiful though. And I like, so if you're listening and you haven't tapped before, when we yawn, we're releasing energy. It's also 10:30 at night here. And I usually say to Jean, like, I don't want to tap before bed because then I won't sleep. But I
sometimes
feel so calm and I feel so actually
relaxed.
ready, like relaxed and ready to go just curl myself up under my blanket and sleep. So my knees and my hips are down at like a 1. Like I'm thinking about them, so they hurt, but until I thought, like, let me go back to my knees and hips, I didn't feel anything in them.
Right. Yeah. I'm feeling more open in my sacral chakra, feel more relaxed. Yeah, I feel more grounded. I'd say it's probably around. Yay. Yes.
Yay.
And everybody, drinking water is really important when you tap because it uses up water in the brain. Your energy system is an electrical system. And also, you release toxins, so drinking water will flush them. And sometimes, if you don't drink enough water when you tap, you might wake up the next day feeling a dehydration headache. That's the extreme. But just to let you know, water makes the whole thing happen. Water is life.
Water is life. That's the name of the podcast. Thank you
That's
so much, Jean.
You're welcome. My pleasure. This was great.
Yeah.
So until next time, I love you, my friend.
I love you, my friend.
We love you all out there too. Everybody's so amazing. We really are. We just need to learn how to embrace who we are and let go of all that conditioning that might have skewed us in another direction.
Yeah.
Okay. Until next time. Au revoir.
Oh, wow.